To the Friday edition of Write It Down with Kim Brown. This is the safe space where we set oppression ablaze because we know and believe and are determined and committed to making sure that something better must arise from the ashes, because clearly the whole thing has to be burned down to the fucking ground. This shit is out of control. Everything that we are dealing with here, really across the globe, but I definitely want to say specifically here in the United States of America, it is the dystopia indeed will be televised, and most of the people televising the dystopia will act as though the dystopia is not so bad. It's just a little plague, nothing to be concerned about, everybody. Just a little climate catastrophes, no fears, just a little Antarctic ice shelf that is set to break off from the bottom of the earth. No worries, nothing to be worried about here, guys. Hey, I'd like to welcome everybody to the program. Excuse me if I'm giving y'all my best Freddie Brooks circa 1990. Let's say 1990. Yeah, that's a good Freddie Brooks year. Freddie Brooks circa 1990. I thought I was going to do something more with my hair, and I did not. So I think you guys will be understanding of my situation today. Let me welcome my people. Hello, Patty P. Hello, Esther. What's going on, Sugar Bugger? What's up, Susan? Toby's in the building. Hey, we got some new youngins up here. What's up, 40 Blaze? How we doing? What's going on, Afraid Not? Peyton is in here. Are my people up in here? Where's Courtney the SLP? Where's Shirley? Where's Northern Witch? Where's Franny Francais? Where's Alicia? There go my niece Alicia up in the building. Yes, Vesper X, where you at? Pookie Wood, where you at? Latif, where you at? Come through, everybody. I want to see your handle up in my space. It's very important. Shout out to Chuck Diesel. What's up, Luke Kang in the building? Appreciate you guys coming through and participating in today's show. What's up, Silky Slim? We got some new youngins in here. Listen, real quick, let me send a shout out to the good sis Sabby Sabs over there at Revolutionary Blackout on Sunday evening. She had me and a bunch of other ethnic women who are concerned as hell about a number of different issues that are happening to us here stateside, and of course happening to Black people and women of color across the globe. So shout out to Sabby Sab, shout out to everyone that was on the ethnic women's panel. Please go to Sabby's channel and check that out. It was a very well-rounded conversation, and I know we got some folks joining us who saw us. And yes, I refer to me as us for reasons. Don't ask. So who saw us on Sabby Sab's channel? So thank you for coming out to hang out with us. Yes, thank you so much for that. Do me a favor, gang, go on and get them likes in, them thumbs up, those subscriptions. And if you are so inclined, you can follow us places around the internet. We are at BIDWKB. Hello, Twitch. We're over there on the Facebook as well, the Instagram. And you can follow us on Twitter at BurnItDownKB. And there are other ways to support us materially. I'll get into that a little later in the show. The most important thing is that you are here spending some time. We want to hear your chats. We want to hear your comments. So be sure to drop all that in the chat. Our good sis, our social media manager, Male, will hold you down and show you love in the chat as well. Who else we got up in here? Anna's in here. Hello, Anna Hart, darling. Welcome. Valley Girls, hello, baby. Nice to see you. Radical Leftist Agenda. I haven't seen you around in a while. Shout out to Microsoft World Technical Support. They were over in the Sabby Sabs panel as well, and I saw you over there, so thank you. So was Big Teal. So was Pookie Wood. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your support. So, on today's show, as promised, Franco, this is for you. In the chat last week, or what the fuck, maybe it was Tuesday, Franco had mentioned about the disabled wheelchair user in Tucson, Arizona, earlier this month, whom police shot 9 times. And I said, yo, we need to talk about how disabled people, particularly Black disabled people, although this person happened to be white, but disabled people are at a higher risk of being brutalized and or shot and killed by police. Black disabled folks especially, and I don't think it gets enough conversation. In addition to people who may be experiencing a mental health crises, our wheelchair users are not immune from police violence. Our deaf and hard of hearing brothers and sisters are not immune from police violence. Neither are our visually impaired brothers and sisters. Neither are our artistic brothers and sisters. So this is a conversation we're going to have a little bit later on in the conversation. Yes, in the conversation of this program on this here hour today. But what I must lead off with, guys, is COVID, okay? And I'm sorry that here we are, literally almost 3 years since this virus came to the U.S. shores, that we are still very much dealing with this virus as if the bitch just fucking got here. It's pretty remarkable. And we have experienced, and this is not a shock, it's just a statement of fact, we've experienced bipartisan failure of leadership, of public health strategy and policy, of public health outreach, people being able to access testing consistently throughout this pandemic, making sure that even our most vulnerable are being attended to. And the reason, partly, that the pandemic has been allowed to persist, and it's, listen, I have evolved, okay? Like, I am not even here to shame unvaccinated people. I figure if you're still unvaccinated, Shody, you know what time it is, okay? You are not unvaccinated out of lack of information. You are unvaccinated as a choice at this point, right? And you've seen, I'm gonna say 1 million, even though if the official U.S. numbers of people dead from COVID, I believe, are 808,000. I believe it's 1 million plus, because they was playing real funny with the COVID death numbers towards the beginning of the pandemic, right? And I still don't think all of the people who have actually died from COVID have been properly accounted as having died from COVID. So I'm sticking with 1 million. So we got 1 million dead Americans, not even Americans, but people who live in America. And if people are still unvaccinated at this point, you know what time it is, right? You know what time it is. I have empathy for people who die of COVID because it looks like a fucking terrible death. But if it's like, at this point, nobody can say they did not become vaccinated from this virus because they couldn't find vaccines, right? No, they are shoveling vaccines at people out here for COVID, okay? You can't say that I remain unvaccinated because I can't find where to get vaccinated. Nope. That is, I guess, the one positive thing we can say about the Biden administration, but I only take that as only being somewhat positive because it's only a beneficial thing for people who live in this continent, right? We are literally hoarding tens of millions of vaccinations, if not hundreds of millions of vaccines away from countries that do not have as much access. We are allowing the pharmaceutical companies, Moderna, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, to charge poorer nations astronomically higher prices than what the U.S. government is being charged for vaccines. So while the U.S. is trying to ensure all of its residents are vaccinated, we clearly could give a fuck if the rest of the world is vaccinated. And consequently, more variants will emerge, right? I can't stand to hear these politicians continuing to shame unvaccinated Americans when the majority of the world does not have access to this vaccine, and we are not allowing other countries to create generic versions of the vaccine at reduced and or free prices because we are protecting the intellectual property and the patents of Big Pharma, of Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson. They need to still be able to reap billions and trillions off this vaccine. So basically the rest of the world can suffer and more COVID variants can emerge and we can just remain in this perpetual pandemic hell cycle. Thanks, Joe Biden. Great job. Way to go. But we know Biden has failed us and fucked up. There's a lot of places. Hold on. There's a lot of places to start, gang. And I'm going to tell y'all. Okay, I was on the wrong thing. Okay, so I'm going to tell y'all how ungood the pandemic has been handled lately here where I live. Okay? Now, you may be like, are you sure? Because last I checked, y'all were handling this very well. Today, for some reason, my Today page has gone away. How come I'm not being allowed in this thing? Boo! Oh, you see it? Okay, well, what's the first? Okay, because the first. Sure, go ahead and pop that up. I'm a little stuck on not here, and I don't understand why my doc is not updated. But anyway, so let me bring you up to speed real quick. State of Maryland, right? Progressive, blue, right? Which you gonna say, Tunde? Oh, okay. Maryland has done a really good job at rolling out the vaccines. Oh, well, let me rephrase. Once Maryland got its shit together, Maryland did a better job of rolling out the vaccines. It was a bumpy start, to say the least. And there were a lot of people who live in mostly black areas in the state of Maryland, like where I live in Prince George's County and in Baltimore City, who were complaining initially that there were not enough vaccines to go around. Okay, this was a year and some change ago. That has since improved. Okay, and Maryland boasts a very high vaccination rate. Okay, but apparently someone took their eye off the ball. Okay. During the summer of hastened reopening, if you recall, Joe Biden declaring that we're going to have an Independence Day free from this virus one day and that any mask mandates should not be, right? And Republican Governor Larry Hogan, who is a business person himself, also a child of the elite. His father held political office, and Larry Hogan grew up a rich little bitch, right? So, but over the past week, this is from Ovetta Wiggins, who is a reporter for the Washington Post, breaking. The Maryland data is back, and we're at over 10% positivity rate, which is a sharp increase over the past 2 weeks. Okay, now guys, don't you remember moderate transmission or low transmission, I believe, was at what, 5% community spread? Like if you were at 5 or 6%, you weren't doing so bad. We're at 10% here in the state of Maryland, a state where a lot of people are vaccinated. Not as many people are boosted, but here we are with these very high positivity rates and a very high vaccination rate. So I need the math to immediately start mathing, okay? I have expressed this concern to you guys before that I am vaxxed, I am boosted, I still remain afraid of COVID. Apparently, COVID does not care if you are vaxxed or boosted, it can still jump on you. Granted, most of these breakthrough cases are reported to be mild and asymptomatic, but lo ho ho, lest we not ever forget, gang, that there is a very statistically significant portion of people who contract so-called mild COVID cases and end up with long-haul COVID. And I think it's really important that we continue to talk about even the possibility that long-haul COVID could befall you, even if your COVID infection is described as mild or asymptomatic. And the bottom line is, guys, the reason why we are now here in the state of Maryland, and I know in other places across the country, these numbers are got to be way worse because the vaccination rates are not as great. And by the way, people in Maryland and DC are having difficult times getting their hands on COVID tests, on at-home COVID tests. But hold on, let me go back to where I was going with that. We live in a nation that has so much hubris about how much we know about something, when the true mark of knowledge and wisdom is what, everybody? To know that you don't know shit, okay? You don't know shit. And even the so-called experts, they have demonstrated this to us over the past 3 years. They don't know shit about this virus. And the shit that they do know, they are acting as though they don't know this, Hold on here. I got to get back to this doc because this is bothering me, because I gotta know how this whole situation is going down here on my doc, and I'm confused. So yes, I got it. All right. Thank you all for your patience. Auntie needs a couple extra seconds. Ha. Okay. So as I mentioned, here in the state of Maryland, we're very blue, very vaccinated, etc. We do have a Republican governor. He's a great big old asshole. We don't like him. He is probably running for president, which is why he takes a lot of sideways fucking postures. And I suppose just the idea of having a viable candidate for president to come from the state of Maryland is enough for most local press to overlook a lot of Larry Hogan's fucking bullshit, which is inevitably what happens. But this could not be overlooked. If you could cue up A2 for me, Tunde. So I want you guys to check this out. Now, this clip has been making the rounds. Perhaps you've seen it, perhaps you have not. And again, let me just stress and underscore again that Larry Hogan thinks that he is a viable Republican nominee for president. If Trump throws his hat back in the ring, Hogan is going to position himself as the rational, reasonable conservative, the throwback conservative, if you will. So he is trying his best to come across as presidential and as a real level-headed leader. Okay. And he was on Fox News Sunday with new host Brett Baier, by the way. We didn't even get into Chris Wallace, funky monkey ass, going over to CNN, which is of no shock to me at all. If you had a famous parent, CNN is going to give you a job, baby. At minimum, you're going to get an interview easily. But they wanted to, because it's not enough straight white men to host primetime cable news shows. You know what I mean? They got to make sure that they keep that very small pool of gentlemen working, without a doubt. So anyway, this past Sunday, Governor Larry Hogan, Fox News Sunday with Brett Baier. Brett Baier was asking Hogan about the increased cases of COVID in the state of Maryland. And Hogan details how this new variant is stressing Maryland hospitals, okay? But I need y'all to pay close attention because Hogan is selling it like, yeah, this is not that good for the state of Maryland. And then Brett Baier immediately asks him about Prince George's County, Maryland, which is the largest concentration of Black people living in the state of Maryland, and our public school system deciding to go back to virtual learning until after the Martin Luther King holiday in January, okay? And listen to how casually fucking Larry Hogan makes it so that these children, specifically these Black children, need to keep their Black ass in school. Let's take a listen to that, Tunde.
I would say in the next couple of days, Omicron is going to be the dominant variant in our state. And we are anticipating over the next 3 to 5 weeks, probably the worst surge we've seen in our hospitals throughout the entire crisis. But we don't expect it to last for long. We're hoping it starts to taper off fairly quickly, but we're facing a pretty rough time.
Prince George's County, the school district, Friday became the first major school district to announce this extended system-wide shift back to remote learning.
Huge
which
mistake.
Is a big deal.
It's a big deal and a terrible mistake, and something we're very opposed to. We are duly elected school boards in these counties have the power to make those decisions. Unfortunately, I don't have that power as governor, but we're going to make it very clear that we think it's a mistake. We all want to keep our kids safe, but we've got protocols in place. There's 100 cases in Prince George's County out of 131,000 students. If there's a particular outbreak in a classroom or in a school and you want to ramp up testing and make sure we keep those people safe, but shutting down an entire school system of kids that have already struggled with distance learning for nearly a year, it's just outrageous and wrong.
Now, gang. Now, I know Larry Hogan is a Republican, right? And just because he's a Republican does not automatically mean he's lying. Okay, no, that nigga was lying. That nigga sat up there and told a big fucking lie. 131,000 students make up the Prince George's County public school system. Larry Hogan said 100 students had COVID, okay? This reporting comes from NBC4 Washington reporter Darcy Spencer. She reported this today at 5 o'clock on the news. PG County school CEO, her name is Monica Golson, Dr. Monica Golson. She's a Black woman. She held a press conference today. What did Monica Golson report, you guys? She reported that in 1 week, 994 students and 261 teachers tested positive across Prince George's County schools. The governor just sat there and told you a lie and told you that it was 100 students that tested positive. Nigga, 994. That's almost 1,000. 1,000. 261 teachers also tested positive. So what did that mean for quarantine? Right? So you can figure if almost 1,000 students test positive for COVID, that must mean there has to be several thousand students who are in quarantine. And yes, your mathematics would be far more accurate than that of the stupid fucking governor. 16,778 students were in quarantine along with 492 staff members. This is across the county. Now, just to give you an idea of how quickly this Omicron variant has been spreading throughout PG County schools, last week, the county decided to close 3 schools for the remainder of the year and until after the holidays, right? 3 middle schools. That was like early last week. By late last week, by fucking Friday, they had decided, no, actually, we need to shut this whole shit down because this shit is getting out of control. But clearly, Larry Hogan cares not about the students and the parents and the family members and those who live in the households as PG County students, because he talked about protocols. And I'd like for you guys to keep in mind that the day after that Fox News Sunday appearance, Monday, yesterday, this goofy ass monkey nigga fucking Larry Hogan, he tested positive himself for COVID, okay? He's double vaxxed and boosted. And part of the reason I think the governor, by and large, has remained so safe throughout this pandemic. Tunda, if you could cue up A3 for me, okay? So Larry Hogan is a cancer survivor, right? So he's someone who is immunocompromised with the pre-existing condition. So I will give shortly to his credit. It's part of the reason he really pushed the vaccine in the state. It wasn't actually, that's not true. Like Hogan took a very libertarian approach to the vaccine. He was not in favor of vaccine mandates at all. But if you could pop up A3 for me, Tunde. So this comes from the state of Maryland, the House, the government house is weirdly why the governor's mansion is how the governor's mansion is referred to on the state of Maryland website. But if you guys could just read that paragraph for me, what does that say? What does that say? That says, by executive order of Governor Larry Hogan on March 12th, 2020, state buildings are closed to the public with only limited access to state employees and credentialed media until further notice. Which means that the governor's mansion, which is a public building in Annapolis, in Maryland state capital, is not open to the public. You cannot go in there and walk around and take a tour. So it's amazing to me how Larry Hogan can acknowledge how the state of Maryland is about to undergo yet another surge of COVID and some variant of COVID, and decry children in one of the blackest parts of the state going back into virtual learning, but his privileged ass, millionaire ass, makes it so that he has very limited interactions with the public. The public just can't be walking up in and out of where Larry Hogan can be. Come on now. Oh man. The glaring hypocrisy when it comes to us, when it comes to making sure that we, working class people, that we, people of color, people from vulnerable and marginalized communities, the determination is there to make sure that our shit stays open and that we stay working, right? And to go even further, to add further insult to injury, we are missing so many key components that were present at this time last year. The supplemental unemployment insurance that the federal government was giving out, the eviction protections that the government was getting out, the rental assistance that many states still have not paid to those who applied for emergency eviction help. And people are still being forced out of their homes. So student loan payments are about to resume, everybody. I mean, what the fuck? They just said, good luck, little buddies. It is everybody for themselves out here. And the only suggestion, which until it's proven otherwise, is to make sure you get the vaccine. And I've shared this concern with you all. And I hate to even think that the beginning parts of my concerns are starting to emerge, but I am worried that a variant of this virus is going to outsmart these vaccines to the extent that they actually start making people sick and people start dying from them. Like, I almost think that's almost the next step. And listen, I am not a virologist, nor do I play one on television. I'm not an epidemiologist. I can't speak authoritatively with any of this shit, but nigga, I got a basic understanding of biology, okay? And I got a basic understanding of how viruses work and how vaccines work. And sometimes them shits only work for a certain amount of time. And to the extent that this COVID SARS-2 virus is still new and has not fully been studied for years and years and years. Not these new jonts, not the new jonts, the old jonts. Remember SARS? Several years back. This is new shit. This is that 2020 shit, 2022 shit now. And I think it's just very arrogant for our political leaders who are basically beholden to the economic elites of this country, right? Because the the Wall Street blue chip 100 companies are demanding of the politicians whom they own to make sure that these people don't have any reasons to stay home, that they don't have any sort of government assistance or any sort of government support to stay home and survive this latest wave of COVID. I don't know what this means for us if this virus continues to outsmart shit. And apparently it's outsmarting and doing the breakthrough thing. And I hope it doesn't go worse than that. Okay, so that was Larry Hogan, the Republican governor of the state of Maryland. And listen, I know we have a lot of folks with us who live in red state America politically, right? Or at least electedly. Let me not even say politically, because we've had this conversation. Just because you happen to reside in the red state does not mean that there is a lack of left politics or a lack of revolutionary folks who live there. They just don't have the majority of the voter turnout. And that's unfortunate. But for those of you, unfortunately, who live in red state policy places, what I'm complaining about here in Maryland, I know ain't shit to what's happening in places like Missouri and places like, I can imagine, Texas. Is the shit crazy? What's going on for all my southern people? North Carolina, Courtney, what it's looking like down there in North Cac? Are these people wearing masks? Guys, because guys, I told y'all, I still remain traumatized from the Genesis concert. It was so many. It was so many. It was so many people in there not wearing a mask. It freaked me out. I'm still freaked out by the shit. I avoided people for literally 10 days after that. I'm like, listen, I just went to a concert at the Verizon Center. This shit was fucking crazy. The whites in there were unmasked by the thousands. It was traumatizing. It was fucking nuts. And that was before DC lifted its mask mandate. Okay, so that was, when the fuck was that? That was at the middle of November. What's today? The 17th. Maybe it was like a month ago ish. Genesis was, okay? Because I remember the concert, I think, was Thursday night, and the mask mandate was set to lift in Washington, D.C. Monday. That's it. And I was aghast that thousands of people were inside in allegedly progressive, smart Washington, D.C., And no, I was wrong. DC is not progressive nor smart. DC is foolish. They are reckless, and I'm disappointed. I remain in tremendous disappointment. Well, it should not shock me at all, because clearly this kind of leadership emanates from the top. And I wanna point something out, guys. Put up A4 if you could for me, Tunde. Okay, so and do me a favor, I only have the text of the tweet. What's the date of that tweet, Tunde? So this is a tweet, guys. Go ahead, I'm Sim. November 15th. Pay attention to this chronology, good people. All right. NBC4's Mark Seagraves tweeted this out November 15th. Mayor Bowser could be closer to lifting some COVID-19 restrictions. Quote, "We're moving from a pandemic to an endemic. Rather than the government telling you what to do to keep safe, people and businesses will evaluate and act accordingly." Okay? And then Seagraves has their press conference tomorrow. Now take a look at that, guys. So you see the tweet, and you see, can you put up okay, so you see the picture. That's Muriel Bowser. That is the mayor of Washington, D.C. In this picture, in this tweet, Muriel Bowser is wearing a black, baseball hat and sort of like an athleisure black jacket, okay? And I remember watching this broadcast and seeing the mayor. I mean, there was video of this quote where she said that we are moving from a pandemic to an endemic. And she talked about the risk-based assessments that residents and people who visit the District of Columbia must take on for themselves. Basically, a very veiled way to say this is personal responsibility. If you could pop up that that press release from the mayor's office, it's going to be A5 there, Tunde. So keep in mind, guys, I saw it with my own eyes. I seen the mayor say that shit, and I remember thinking, what the fuck did she just say? So her office puts out this press release that says, starting the 22nd on Monday, going forward, individuals would be advised to follow a risk-based guidance when choosing layered mitigation strategy, okay? This is how she announced that the indoor mask mandate in the District of Columbia would be lifted with some exceptions, and I'll run them down briefly. Congregate settings, public transportation, university residential areas, you know, you still had to keep masks on in those circumstances, but restaurants, gyms, entertainment venues were sort of given the option of whether or not to keep having their patrons wear masks inside. And this move by the mayor was supported by two very influential groups in Washington, D.C. Destination D.C., which is the tourism arm or the tourism lobbying group, so to speak, of DC, and the Restaurant Association, which, of course, as you know, DC is a big tourist destination with lots of restaurants, and all of these things suffered mightily during the lockdowns of the pandemic, right? And Mayor Bowser, like many of her predecessors, are darlings of business and developers in this city. That's part of the reason why gentrification is as bad as it is. Muriel Bowser did not start the gentrification crisis here in the district, but she has helped it along in her own special way. Okay, so at her core, and as we have seen with a lot of the freedom movements and demonstrations that happened last year in DC, on and before January 6th, we've covered it extensively on here. Muriel Bowser is not the greatest for native Washingtonians. Okay, that's proof positive. So you saw that. So guys, I went through NBC Washington's website. I went through their YouTube channel page. I went through Mark Seagrave's Twitter page looking for his package of when Muriel Bowser said what she said. We are moving from a pandemic to an endemic, right? Couldn't find it. Couldn't find it anywhere. And listen, long have I kind of suspected of Mark Seagrave specifically being very chummy with the mayor. And I'm not suggesting nothing foolish like romantic. I don't know what these people do in their personal time. All I know is that Seagraves don't seem to have tough questions for Mayor Bowser, okay? Don't seem to have tough questions for Mayor Bowser. And I think, at least my suspicion is that the erasure of that clip, again, of the mayor wearing that black hat and that black jacket, and listen, Twitter detectives, or pardon me, internet detectives, if you can find it, send it to me. I would have certainly appreciate it, because I looked really hard and I could not find it, okay? Because how dare the mayor of a major international city, let alone the mayor of the capital city of this country, lift a mask mandate, an indoor mask mandate, as we head into winter. The mask mandate was lifted on November 22nd, the week of the Thanksgiving holiday. If we have learned nothing from this virus, is that every single time there has been holiday gatherings, regardless of the point of the year that it has been, be it Easter, be it fucking 4th of July, the COVID cases fucking go up every single time. And for the mayor and the DC public health team to make such a gross miscalculation about the behavior and the nature of this virus, about the behavior and the nature of people when the temperatures turn cold, that of course people are going to be fucking going inside. Of course people are going to start congregating, because check this out here. When you tell people that they don't have to wear a mask inside anymore, good luck getting them to put that mask back on after they had been accustomed for now 4 weeks to not wearing the mask. See, this is the lack of fucking leadership that I'm talking about, because apparently the Bowser administration and DC Public Health are going to fit the science to accommodate the business, to accommodate the economy, to keep the economy moving. So if you prioritize district tourism dollars and restaurant dollars at the risk of the residents of the city and people who commute and work to and from the city by the hundreds of thousands every single day, fuck you, man. Like, fuck you all the way. Two finger salute. That's how we go. I want us to take a look, y'all. So, okay, November 22nd, the indoor mask mandate was lifted. To cue up A6, if you could for me, please. So, you know, since NBC Washington seems to be way too chummy with the Bowser administration, the way that they cover Muriel Bowser has to be tempered, right? Our expectations have to be tempered, because when the mayor, a publicly elected official, not a healthcare official, not someone from the Centers for Disease Control, not someone from the World Health Organization, it is not on her as a elected official to declare that the global pandemic is going to become endemic, okay? Because the WHO has not made that proclamation. The plague is still plaguing, okay? Until further fucking notice. And I don't care how much Destination DC and how much the National Restaurant Association and the restaurants in the district want it to be not to be so. The pandemic is still here, and the district experienced a record number of positive cases, as had the state of Maryland, and the shit is just not cute at all. So, grand opening, grand closing. November 22nd, the indoor mask mandate was lifted. It was rendered optional. And this is what has happened in the past 24 hours. Tunde, if we could please take a look at that.
I don't regret evolving with the virus.
No regrets, says Mayor Muriel Bowser, less than 1 month after the mayor dropped the indoor mask mandate to significant pushback in about face. As COVID cases spike in the city, Mayor Bowser issues a state of emergency and now says everyone in D.C. must wear a mask indoors, starting Tuesday at 6 a.m. until the same time, January 31st.
As conditions warranted, we've changed our interventions, and we're changing them again.
So here's the administration's plan to get the district through the winter months while the Omicron variant surges in the area. All D.C. government employees must be vaccinated and boosted. D.C. expanding testing sites in the city. And starting Wednesday, residents with an ID can get 2 free rapid antigen tests at these 8 libraries.
We encourage individuals, whether they're getting these test kits from our Test Yourself Express program or picking them up from their local pharmacy or many of the other locations that they're getting these tests from, is to be able to report that information to us. And that's coronavirus.dc.gov/over-the-counter.
Winter break for D.C. public schools is now extended until Wednesday, January 5th. That will give students, staff, and teachers at all public and charter schools a chance to pick up a rapid test before returning to in-person classes that Wednesday. But testing in is not required.
We encourage all of our family members to participate. And as we always remind our community, we're in this together, and we want to ensure that our family members are smart about their activities during the holidays.
City leaders again doubling down on their vaccination message and adding that more testing and more masks should help D.C. get through what is expected to be the winter surge.
I think we're all tired of it. I'm tired of it too. But we have to respond to what's happening in our city and what's happening in our nation, and we have to continue to focus on keeping the critical parts of our government open, starting with schools.
Delia Gonsalves, WUSA 9.
Got to keep the critical parts of our society open, starting with schools, because we know if we don't have public childcare in the form of public education, then how can parents get to work and earn record profits for all these corporations and these billionaires? Come on, man. We cannot shut down this economy. Billionaires are making out like bandits. They have to continue to increase those record profit, their share of record revenues. That has to keep growing because that is the nature of capitalism. Capitalism, you give it an inch, it takes a mile. Okay, like the insatiable need in order to continue the drive for these record profits it cannot be stopped. And don't let a little thing like a variant of COVID, a deadly virus, a new variant of the deadly virus that is what? 70 times more transmissible than the Delta variant. What? When these niggas said 70 times more transmissible, I said, I heard that wrong. Rewind. What? I thought it had to be 7. No, they said 70 times more transmissible. And granted, the presence of the vaccines obviously is keeping people I guess not from dying, people who have had the vaccine and perhaps even been boosted, saving lives, keeping people out of the ICU. Hey, that's good enough for me because that is exactly where I do not want to land, in the ICU with them Bama's telling me we're going to put you on the ventilator in 10 minutes. I mean, just imagine. Can you imagine? Just put yourself in those shoes if you could for a moment. You're about to get the ventilator in 10 minutes and we don't know when or if you are going to wake up. Now imagine them telling that to your folks, right? Like, it's not a game out here, y'all. COVID, if it jumps on you and gets you, that's not the way you want to go out. I assure you. It's a terrible way to go. Bad way to go, as my man from Game of Thrones used to say, the Hound. Anytime somebody would die fucked up on Game of Thrones, Hound would be like, bad way to go. And I'd be like, yep, that's a terrible way to go. Yes, bad way to go. So as you see that again, as we continue to talk about political failure on the issue of public health crisis during a pandemic in a country that does not have mandatory or universal health care for its residents, right? Make no mistake, guys. I know they don't tell this to you regularly on the news, but the United States continues to lead the world in COVID deaths. Like, no one has died from COVID more than people living in this country. The official number, I believe, is 808,000. And as I said earlier, I believe that number to be closer to 1 million, if not past 1 million. And here we are approaching year 3 of this pandemic, and the federal government still cannot get its shit together on fucking testing. Okay. Tunde, if you could pop up Jessel's clip for me, this is going to be A8. You're seeing the lines all across the country, and I'm going to show y'all this as well. This is from Baltimore, filmed by Baltimore-based reporter Jessel Noor. And I don't think, you can just run it, Tunde, because I don't think there's any, oh, awesome. Okay, beautiful. Yeah, so this is Jessel shooting the line for take-home tests. This is at the Waverly Pratt Library location in Baltimore, Maryland. This was Jessel earlier today, recording how this line stretches and stretches for blocks and blocks, and similar scenes are being played out really everywhere across the country as the Omicron variant, now reported to be the most dominant variant in the nation, continues to wreak havoc. So you see those lines for people trying to get take-home tests, but in a lot of places in the country, tests aren't available. Can't get no fucking tests. And this was Jen Psaki, White House press secretary, a couple of weeks ago. And I don't think we played this clip, but I think I talked about this clip. But of course, most people have seen it because this particular excerpt of that day's press conference from maybe about a month ago, maybe about the same time as the DC indoor mask mandate was lifted. But Jen Psaki said this extremely goofy shit to the White House press corps regarding whether or not the U.S. government should be sending out tests to every American. Every American needs to be tested? Pah!
Look at what we've done over the course of time. We've quadrupled the size of our testing plan. We've cut the cost significantly over the past few months. And this effort to push to ensure insurers you're able to get your tests refunded means 150 million Americans will be able to get free tests.
It's kind of complicated, though. Why not just make them free and give them out and have them available everywhere?
Should we just send one to every American?
Maybe.
Then what happens if every American has one test? How much does that cost? And then what happens after that?
All I know is that other countries seem to be making them available in greater quantities for less money.
Well, I think we share the same objective, which is to make them less expensive and more accessible, right? Every country's going to do that differently. And I was just noting that, again, our tests go through the FDA approval process. That's not the
Bitch, don't nobody fucking care. What is the shit you are talking there, Jen Psaki? Sound like a bunch of goddamn nonsense. Listen, we are in a pandemic. It mandates for new shit to be done. The same system obviously is not going to get us out of this. First of all, the same system still allows millions of Americans to ration their insulin for diabetes. It allows millions of Americans to die from cancer and other shit. Meanwhile, Cuba has a whole lung cancer vaccine, but that's a whole nother conversation. So that was Jen Psaki about a month ago at the White House. And if you could pop up, this is going to be a 9 for me Tunde. New news today. Well, lo and behold, if you shame feckless politicians and spineless politicians and politicians who lack any sort of courage to do the right thing, well, goddamn it, you might be able to shame them into, by accident, doing the right fucking thing. As reported by ABC News, Joe Biden to announce to mail 500 million free rapid COVID tests to Americans in the next month. That is, on some respect, a serious approach to this. Testing is, I can't say it's going to get us out of the pandemic because, again, the fact that globally majority of people are not vaccinated and do not have access to vaccines, it's what's going to keep us in this horrible ass hamster wheel that we find ourselves on with the grand opening and grand closing bullshit. But I take this as a tiny victory of push Biden left, make Biden accountable. If they're not going to give us universal health care and Medicare for all in whole, well, I guess we just gonna have to make them give it to us in piecemeal. And I guess a tiny piece of this has to do with the distribution of tests, which, let's see, 500 million. I mean, that's not even 2 tests for every American, right? And that sounds a little woefully inadequate even within itself. And it just is another reminder that even when Democrats kind of do the right thing, they still fuck around and don't do it all the way right. I want us to compare real quick, okay? A couple of things. So the United States is not going to lock down. Joe Biden and many states have said, many states governors have said that they have no intention of locking down. But there are countries in Europe which have begun to lock down. Mali's in Germany. Mali said Germany is finna lock the fuck down if they have not already done so. Mali, share with us what Germany is doing, if you could, at your leisure in the chat. But I want us to take a look real quick at this France 24 package regarding the Netherlands, okay? The Netherlands are about to go into a Christmas lockdown. And I want you guys just to kind of get an idea at like how much more serious some of these other countries, namely some of these European countries, are taking not only the pandemic generally, but the spread of the Omicron variant. So check out this package from France 24 about the Netherlands locking down for the holiday season.
So severe lockdown starting at 5 a.m. tomorrow, Julia. All shops, restaurants, galleries, indoor sports facilities, everything will have to close down. Restaurants will be able to do takeaway. You can do pickups at shops, but really the only things that will be open are petrol stations, pharmacies, libraries, and supermarkets. Also, an increased limitation on the number of visitors. Now, you could have 4. That's been reduced to 2 people, just 2 people allowed to visit you at home, except for during Christmas and New Year's Eve. Then that limit of 4, which was announced just last Tuesday, will remain in place. And all of these measures are on top of existing measures. So things like wearing a mask inside, that will continue. All schools will also be closed. They already were closed early for the Christmas holidays. That will now continue with all these measures, this very, very strict lockdown set to stay in place until the 14th of January.
Let's just hear from Mark Rutte now. He spoke earlier, of course.
We staan hier vanavond met een somber gemoed. In één zin samengevat, Nederland gaat vanaf morgen nog een keer in lockdown. Nederland gaat nog een keer op slot. Dat is onvermijdelijk vanwege de 5e golf die met de Omicron-variant op ons afkomt. Omicron verspreidt zich nog sneller dan we al vreesden. En dus moeten we nu ingrijpen om zoveel mogelijk erger te voorkomen. Uit voorzorg.
Well, that was Prime Minister Mark Rutte breaking the bad news to the Dutch. But of course, this comes on the back of another announcement earlier this week where the government said it would extend a nighttime curfew. So why are they imposing a lockdown now?
So this has actually been quite surprising because the numbers of people in hospital have actually started to come down. Mark Rutte also said that we've actually passed the peak of the 4th wave. But as you could just hear, they're very worried about a 5th wave caused by the Omicron variant. Now, of course, a lot of it is unknown about how this variant will affect the Dutch system, but it is fast becoming dominant, with most of the new cases being an Omicron infection. And in the past, the Dutch government has been criticized for responding too late. And I think they're trying to prevent that this time.
Interesting. So, the Dutch seem to care about their citizenry. They seem to be worried about hospitalizations and the further spreading of a deadly virus during a deadly pandemic. How socially, how communist of them. How dare they? Communism. A pox on all those weed smoking communists there in the Netherlands. Guys, I'm worried. I'm a little worried. Not so much about Omicron, because at least the science coming from Omicron says that they don't think that it's as deadly, even though it is absolutely killing people. But it's not Omicron that I'm worried about. It's the new nigga-cron. It's whatever variant is waiting for us, or variants are waiting for us in 2022, right? Because there's nothing about the behavior of the globe driven by the necessity and the insatiable appetite of a capitalist global system, right? There's nothing that indicates that this shit is going to be able to slow down at any point for us to actually recover from it. And the tragedy is that people are going to continue to die. And when we look at who has died the most, it has been people living in the United States of America. And not to say that other places have not experienced very high COVID deaths. We know that Brazil experienced horrible mass deaths over the past year and a half because of, again, horrible policies enacted by shitty fucking leadership. Right now, well, I was going to say Trump's not as bad as Bolsonaro, or Biden's not as bad as Bolsonaro, but an argument can be made. An argument can be made that they're all atrocious in their very own special and unique ways. But listen to this, y'all. I want us to listen to Trump. Did y'all hear that Trump got booed the other night in Alabama for saying that he had been vaccinated? I just want y'all to hear Trump get booed. And to be honest, it's not exclusively Trump supporters who have these very dubious attitudes towards the American medical community. And I think, honestly, the American medical community needs to do a little bit of examination as to why people are so distrustful, really across the political spectrum, why that is, right? And why has the messaging been so terrible? And I think the way that scientists will massage the science in order to accommodate, the capitalist storyline, like this has to continue, so make it fit. Okay, make the shit work, so we can assure people, give enough people enough assurances that they feel comfortable resuming back to work no matter what's going on. So listen to Trump get booed in Alabama, of all places.
Closer to Europe, anything to hit us, but they'd say in South Korea, they're doing so well. South Korea is being decimated right now. India is doing so well. India is being decimated right now. We did a great job on that. The ventilators, the equipment that we got, the cupboards were all bare, everything that we did. And then we developed a vaccine, 3 vaccines in 3 months, in 9 months. And actually, I'll tell you, it was 3 days less than 9 months. And it's great. And you know what? I believe totally in your freedoms. I do. You got to do what you have to do. But I recommend take the vaccines. I did it. It's good. Take the vaccines. But no, that's okay. That's all right. You got your freedoms. But I happen to take the vaccine. If it doesn't work, you'll be the first to know, okay? I'll call up Alabama. I'll say, hey, you know what? But it is working. But you do have your freedoms. You have to maintain that. You have to maintain that. And you got to get your kids back to school.
What the fuck does he even talking about? You got to maintain your freedoms. You got to maintain your freedoms. Yes, you have the freedom to spread COVID all around. Yes, sir.
Hey, the funniest part about that clip was how they cheered when he was bragging about America being the fastest to develop the vaccine, but then booed him when he said he actually took the vaccine. It's just like the cognitive dissonance of like, oh yeah, we want to be first, but also we hate the vaccine. So they don't know what to do. They're confused.
And you know what? The fact that Trump, in all of his misguidedness and intentional misguided leadership that he offered while president when the pandemic first erupted, the fact that he can't even convince his own supporters to get vaccinated, despite the fact that now he himself has admitted that he's been vaccinated, and it's like, you really fucked up your own folks here, Donnie. Like, I don't know. Anyway, I had to play that for y'all with Donald Trump partially getting booed. The boos were not as robust as I hoped that they would be. So, real quick, yes, that's what I wanted to point out. Donald Trump said that South Korea is being decimated, just to put things in perspective for you guys, okay? So according to Johns Hopkins University, who is keeping track of global data, this is over the last 28 days. South Korea, different place entirely. South Korea, over the past 28 days, has had about 160,000 new COVID cases, okay? They have had, throughout the month of December, 1,169 deaths, which is a record high for South Korea. Okay, by comparison, the United States, I believe, hold on, let me get back to that page. Okay, so you heard that they have two different numbers here on the Hopkins website, but it's between 1,100 and 1,500 deaths over the past 28 days in South Korea. Now, by comparison, the United States has had, I believe, in total, we've had 50 million confirmed COVID positive cases. We've had 808,000 confirmed deaths total. And over the past 28 days, compared to the roughly 1,500 deaths that South Korea has experienced in the past 28 days, the United States has experienced 34,000 deaths. 34,000 deaths. Let me say that to you one more time. 34,000 deaths in 1 month, according to Johns Hopkins. But Trump can tell his supporters that South Korea is being decimated. Well, no. In fact, it is the United States continuing to be decimated, not only by the greed of capitalism, but by the ineptitude and failure of leadership of not only elected officials, but public health officials alike. And it's imperative on this point, you guys, that we have to do what we can to save ourselves. Who just dropped us some bucks? Oh, no, they did. Thank you, Nole D. Thank you, Nole D. Very kind and very sweet of you, dear. We certainly appreciate that. Are you kicking me off, Tunde, or can I get to my last segment? Awesome. Oh, by the way, guys, Molly says in Germany that you can get a free test in like 3 locations within minutes from my house. And I'm glad. Thank you for sharing that, Molly. That's the case in Berlin. And as you heard in some of these previous packages, Washington, D.C. is offering free tests at public libraries. And I think the mayor of Boston today tweeted out that Bostonians can go get free tests. And listen, this is what we're having to see. A lot of our local leadership's having to step up and fill the vacuum where the federal government has fallen down on the job under the Trump administration, under the Biden administration, and likely under whoever the fuck comes after Biden Harris, right? So please move accordingly. This pandemic is not over, okay? If you ever wanted to know how society would behave in a plague, you are seeing it right now. And it's not good. It is not good. There's a lot of disregard for our fellow people, especially our disabled people, especially our immunocompromised people who still continue to be the most vulnerable and those who are more likely to be hospitalized in ICU if they get a positive infection, even if they are vaxxed or boosted. So we have to remember this, okay? Remember this. Hello, Afra. Afra's in the chat. Hello, Afra. Okay. I want to move along because speaking of disabled people, and let me send a special shout out to Franco for mentioning this in the chat, I believe it was on Tuesday, because I saw the story when it happened some weeks ago, and I kept meaning to bring it on the program, and I kept not doing it. So that's my bad. But this is an important topic, guys. We talk about the issue of police violence, police brutality quite a bit, and especially through the lens of how police are seldom held accountable for violence and brutality and fatal encounters with the Black community and people who are often non-white, and especially people who fall into multiple marginalized categories, like our Black trans brothers and sisters, and like Black disabled people, okay? And you would be surprised. Now, the perception in society about how disabled people are treated is very different from the way that disabled people are actually treated, right? People think that, for example, like the Americans with Disability Act, oh, well, if a disabled person is experiencing issues of inaccessibility, or if a public place is inaccessible, can't they just call the ADA and the federal government will come and address that? No, that is not actually how that works at all. The ADA is a law that does mandate some accessible shit, for example, like curb cutouts on the street, right? But you'd really be surprised at how many chasms there are in the ADA and how many places in which disabled people's needs are not met nor served by the ADA, and how even within the Americans with Disabilities Act, there's a lot of shit that's very difficult to enforce, okay? But when we talk about the issue of how being Black and disabled intersects with police violence, it could oftentimes be extremely deadly. But the person who was killed in Tucson was not Black, but they were absolutely disabled, and absolutely their story needs to be told. So I wanted to take a look at this package from Fox 10 Phoenix. This incident happened, I believe, the night of November the 30th. So, and I picked this particular package because I thought they did a decent job. I mean, obviously they're not going to show the extent or the actual moment in which the wheelchair user was fatally shot by Tucson police. But I thought they did a decent job of surmising the facts. But we know how local news has a tendency to do anyway. So, Tunde, if we could take a look at B1, please.
John, Christina, Tucson police wasted no time releasing the body camera footage as well as surveillance video, ultimately terminating Officer Ryan Remington. The chief says he's deeply troubled by Remington's decision to shoot a 61-year-old man 9 times from behind. We've edited the video due to its graphic nature.
He's 84. I have a male suspect that just shoplifted knife in front of me, pulled a knife on me.
The call to dispatch just before 6 last night from a Walmart parking lot in Tucson. The man seen on the motorized wheelchair is 61-year-old Richard Lee Richards. Police say he stole a toolbox from Walmart. Officer Ryan Remington, who was off duty but working security at the store, follows Richards, who approaches the garden section at Lowe's. Officer Stephanie Taylor arrives on scene. Her body-worn camera shows the moments leading up to the fatal shooting of Richards.
Got his knife in his other hand. Okay. Do not go to the store, sir.
Stop now. You need to
Surveillance footage shows another angle of Remington opening fire. Richards died shortly after. TPD Chief Chris Magnus provided brief details, saying when a Walmart employee asked Richards if they could see a receipt for the toolbox, he pulled out a knife and said, "Here's your receipt." Magnus says Richards would not comply with Officer Remington.
Now, according to the Walmart employee, Mr. Richards said, "If you want me to put down the knife, you're going to have to shoot me."
Eventually, Remington fired 9 rounds.
Officer Remington fired 9 rounds, striking him in the back and side.
Remington has been with the Tucson Police Department for 4 years, terminated today.
His use of deadly force in this incident is a clear violation of department policy and directly contradicts multiple aspects of our use of force and training.
And important to note, Remington is the only officer to open fire in this incident. Here's a statement from his attorney, Mike Story, who says, quote, "He did have a taser, but in his mind, he couldn't use it because he didn't feel he had the proper spread to deploy it with the wheelchair between him and Richards." The shooting is now being reviewed by the Pima County Sheriff's Office, and according to records with the Department of Corrections, Richards is a convicted felon who served prison time for burglary, armed robbery, and attempted first-degree murder. Most recently, he was released in 2018.
Where would y'all like to start? Because that shit is loaded as fuck. We have talked about this already on the program, the way that the rise in crime bullshit narrative that the police and the local media have seized upon, especially regarding theft and so-called property crimes and shoplifting, is far overblown, right? And for Mr. Richards, which, by the way, condolences to his family and to his loved ones. First of all, Mr. Richards didn't sound like he was no fucking punk out here, okay? Mr. Richards had the poker on him, had the knife on him, and basically said anybody want it, they can get it. But you know what I didn't hear? I didn't hear nobody say that Mr. Richards got up out that fucking chair and charged anybody with the fucking knife. Now, if he had the knife in his hand and kept it rolling, excuse me, that to me does not sound like a threat to anyone's life. Simply brandishing a weapon that is not a gun is not the same as actively charging somebody with said weapon, okay? Somewhat good on the Tucson police for firing this officer, but the firing of officers who have fatal encounters while on duty is a very insufficient remedy. It's not good enough. Them losing their job is not good enough. Criminal charges have to come, because if I were that cop, I'd get a way different fucking lawyer, because, I mean, for the lawyer to put out the statement who said, yeah, my client did have a taser, but the reason that they didn't deploy their taser is because they didn't feel as though they had a good enough spread to use the taser with the person who was in the wheelchair. So, naturally, he pulled out his pistol and shot him 9 fucking times. That's the only choice, only remedy that there was for that officer. Lord have mercy. Now listen, and at the very end of the package, the victim there, Mr. Richards, the reporter described Mr. Richards' extensive criminal history, which, like I said, it sounded like Mr. Richards was a violent person. He had been jailed for first-degree murder and had been recently released. But at the end of the day, Mr. Richards is a wheelchair user. And the officers could clearly see that. The people working at the Walmart where he allegedly stole items could clearly see that. If Mr. Richards was a real physical threat to somebody, they would have been able to to very easily diffuse that. But it sounds to me as though Mr. Richards verbalized his threats and kept it pushing, okay? Now, were there other ways for that officer to resolve that situation absent shooting Mr. Richards 9 times without question? Did it involve likely hours of police negotiation and de-escalation tactics that perhaps the officer was not interested in getting involved in because maybe it was almost time for his shift to be over? Again, there seems to be a real reluctance on behalf of the police to actually do their fucking jobs. Like the fatal shootings just seem to be a way to finish the shit early. You know what I mean? Well, shit, if I just shoot this motherfucker, I could still get off work in time and get several weeks paid administrative leave. After all, you know, my wife did say she wanted me to take her on vacation. You understand? The fatal resolution to public encounters with police or with people who are allegedly committing crimes seems to be the very quick and easy fix, even though that this cop lost his job, seemingly has not lost his freedoms. I did not see where any charges have yet to be filed against this cop, and it's not even a guarantee that that's going to happen. But I want us to play this last package, and as much shit as I talk about local media, and as much as I utilize the packages of local media, just for the simple fact, like they are there and I am not there, right? So fine, I'll look at the local news package from Tucson or from Salina City or from Minneapolis to get an idea and of course some words, to hear directly from people who are there. That's why I do that. But this one was actually very well done. This is from WTHR TV in Indianapolis. Shirley! This young reporter, her name was, I believe, Sarah Jones. And Sarah Jones did a really masterful job on this package that you're about to see about being Black and disabled and encountering the police, okay? And just a heads up, for any of our viewers who may be blind or visually impaired, what you're going to hear is translation of people talking in American Sign Language, okay? So it's going to be people speaking with American Sign Language and an interpreter voicing those quotes. So take a look at this package, y'all. WTHR TV in Naptown. Great package.
The simple act of handcuffing a deaf person is a form of violence. If a deaf person uses their hands to communicate, that in and of itself is violent.
Disability justice advocates are now speaking out about police use of force, and they told our Sarah Jones today that we're missing a major part of this discussion.
I watched this man die. I was the one that was recording the whole thing.
It was a pain so palpable.
And everybody gasped. How do I feel? I don't know how to feel.
It could be felt miles away.
Numb. And it started me thinking, why?
It's not right. Things need to be fair, and we need to be treated equally now.
For those of us who are older, it was Rodney King. But for the younger generation who's grown up with social media at their fingertips, it's George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice, Mike Brown, and so many more.
It's getting worse and worse every day. It's frustrating for us, people of color, not just in the United States, but around the world.
The vast majority of them are in fact disabled. Freddie Gray was a survivor of lead poisoning. Eric Garner had asthma. Quan McDonald had multiple disabilities, including complex PTSD.
Without any national database on police use of force or police violence, it's very difficult to quantify statewide or nationally. But a study by the Ruderman Family Foundation says a third to half of all use of force incidents involve a disabled person.
That's actually a really low number. Simply because the methodology used to define disability in those studies was very Americans with Disabilities Act specific.
And when it comes to the deaf people involved in these cases, Talila says the vast majority are ethnic minorities.
All except 3 were Black or brown, indigenous. There were several indigenous people.
Racism and ableism intertwine to create heightened fear in the officers. There's the perception that someone who is a person of color is more dangerous. There's a perception that someone who not responding the way they would expect them to respond or is behaving differently than they would expect them to behave is dangerous. And that creates the response. And courts have too often said, well, rational fear, maybe it was okay. They get away with it.
Debrica says she's only interacted with police officers who were doing their job and upholding the law.
Very calm, relaxed. I always tell them I'm deaf. I get my paper and pen to write. And people always say, the police, that should be their responsibility to get paper and pen, but it's not a big deal to me. They're usually fine with me and I'm fine with them.
IMPD does not receive training for interactions with the deaf or hard of hearing. They have interpreters when needed, and all officers are trained in crisis intervention.
They're trained in how to intervene and de-escalate in situations.
Debrica says knowing that racism and ableism are very real and rampant.
Do you realize that you are a black deaf male and you're out in the world? Anything can happen to you. And I'm scared because I'm your mom and I can't hear.
A mother can't help but worry about her son.
Now, again, it's really difficult to put qualitative data on whom police are actually killing, because if you guys remember our Tuesday show, the FBI is not able to get the majority of police departments to comply with supplying that information. So again, a lot of this stuff, I won't say it's touch and feel, so to speak, but it's not comprehensive. So for it to be estimated that 50% of the people who are killed in fatal police encounters are disabled, and we know roughly that 1,000 people get murdered in this country by police every year. So we're talking about 500 people, disabled people, at least, who are murdered by police annually, okay? And there doesn't seem to be very little attempts to stop this or to mitigate this. The way that police and their unions and fraternal orders of police are standing in the way of reimagining public safety is undoubtedly putting the lives of more disabled people, and specifically more Black and Indigenous disabled people, at risk. And because we are the most vulnerable and the most marginalized, and really they want us all dead any fucking way, there's not much political will to prevent this or to stop this. So please, when we talk about whom police kill and the issue of defunding the police, this is literally a life and death situation for people who may or may not be able to communicate themselves in a crisis situation. I told you guys this, I'm gonna say this real quick and then I'm gonna be out. But years ago, the one and only time that I've ever called the police to my home, and I assure you I would never make that mistake again, the way that the police responded to me when I first encountered them, I really, really understood in a very split moment of realization that if I was not able to articulate really fast and extremely clear whom I was and my relationship to the situation, and that I am myself was of somewhat sound mind and not having any sort of breakdown or any lapse, the situation could have gone real south for me, because they already let me know that they were committed to misunderstanding me from the outside. So I had to be immeasurably above board when trying to explain myself and my situation. And that scared me, because what if I had not been able to be of sound mind? What if I was experiencing an emotional or a mental crisis? What if for a reason I was inebriated or I was incapacitated for taking medication or any fucking thing, right? If for any goddamn reason I am not able to perfectly explain myself to the police, my life is in danger. Okay. And that is something that I just want you guys to take away with you during this holiday season, because I know a lot of our brothers and sisters are experiencing very, very difficult times. So if you see people out in the street, as we would say here at the DMV, lunching, if you see people out in the street lunching like shit, please try to have kindness for that person, have a little bit of empathy for that person. Please don't call the police on that person. Just remember that a lot of us are out here dealing with a lot of very stressful and difficult things during this holiday season. A lot of things that do not need police intervention, nor do they need police attention. And you don't know what a person's situation is. So unless they are actively coming after you or yours, if they are just minding their business but being strange, or what you perceive as strange, or behaviors that you may not understand, let it be. Let it be. Thank you, Veritier. I don't know how to say that, darling, but she dropped us some Icelandic dollars. And I certainly appreciate that. I'm going to say Vera. Thank you so much for your support of the program, Vera. We really appreciate that, guys. So as y'all have perhaps deduced, we are not doing a show on Friday for Christmas Eve. We all said thumbs down to the Christmas Eve show. We have plans. So if you do celebrate the holiday, this holiday season, please have a wonderful and safe holiday. I'm way late for Hanukkah. Happy belated Hanukkah to all of our Jewish brothers and sisters who celebrate. Of course, you know, we got Kwanzaa coming up Sunday the 26th. So everything that you celebrate or do not celebrate, we wish you the best and the happiest and the safest circumstances for you, your family, and your friends. So on behalf of me, Tunde, and Molly, we will see you guys Tuesday, real quick. If you want to drop us some Christmas gifts, you can do so. $ BIDWKB at Cash App. We're on Venmo at BIDWKB, PayPal.me/BIDWKB, or you could sign up to become a sustaining member through Patreon at patreon.com/BIDWKB. So thank you all in advance for all of your support this year and all of your continued amazingness and being the best motherfucking chat on YouTube right here, baby. Y'all know what it is. So we'll see y'all back here on Tuesday. See y'all later. Bye-bye.